الرحمن الرحيم الصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. This crowd is definitely the most exciting crowd, at least for any imam or any religious leader. You have bright ideas, you have bright minds, you're in college, you're in such a interesting time in your lives, and it's always interesting to engage with you guys. You teach me, as I hope I can maybe offer you a thing or two that you can use throughout your lives. And another element of college that makes it so interesting is that you mix with so many different people from different backgrounds, and you are just bombarded with ideologies. All these isms and ologies coming left and right. And living in the West, alhamdulillah, there's a lot of blessings, a lot of opportunity here, and a lot of freedom to explore. And sometimes, we go a little bit off track. And the lifestyle that many people here, most of us are used to, accustomed to, is one that we call liberalism, right? Choose what you want to choose. If you choose this lifestyle, that's okay. If you choose that lifestyle, that's okay, right? And this, as you know, sometimes creates friction with Islam itself. And how do we navigate that? Well, of course, the Quran has a lot of guidance, a lot of insight for us, how to deal with these different ideologies. And from an Islamic, Islamic knowledge perspective, what you find in Islam is that Islam never fully rejects any ideology just because it's an ideology that's not Islam, right? Rather, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you find that He will acknowledge the truth that is said by even the enemies of Islam. So take, for example, in Surah Al-A'raf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala quotes the pagans as saying, let me think of the beginning of the verse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala quotes the pagans as saying, وَإِذَا فَعَلُوا فَاحِشَةً قَالُوا وَجَدْنَا عَلَيْهَا آبَاؤُنَا وَاللَّهُ أَمَرَنَا بِهَا. These pagans, they say, if they do indecent acts, fornication, whatever it may be, they say, we found our forefathers doing that, that's why we do that, and God told us to do it. He said it's okay. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds and says, قُلْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَأْمُرُ بِالْفَحْشَاءِ. Tell them that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not command indecency. So He negated one of the two claims, and that is that what they said, that Allah commanded us to do this. What He didn't negate is the fact that their fathers were doing it. That is the truth. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you don't find it in the Quran that we just completely reject any ideology, even if it's contrary to our religion or doesn't have the Islamic tag. Another example is an interesting hadith where Abu Hurairah was appointed to guard these zakah money. And during the night, someone came to him trying to steal. So Abu Hurairah took his hand and said, I'm going to take you to the Prophet. He said, no, please, I have kids, I have this, let me go, I promise you I won't come back. So he let him go. Look at the mercy of the heart of the believer. The next night, the same thing. Finds the same person. Grabs him and says, I'm taking you this time to the Prophet. He said, no, please, I have kids, please, I promise you not to do it again. The third night, comes back. And he says, Abu Hurairah catches him and he says, look, if you let me go, I will teach you something. What's that? He says, if you go to sleep, or before going to sleep, you recite Ayatul Kursi, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects you from the jinn. So he let him go. And Abu Hurairah was with the Prophet and the Prophet told him, Abu Hurairah, tell me what happened. Of course, he's a prophet, he knows this stuff. Abu Hurairah didn't tell him, he said, Abu Hurairah, tell me what happened. He said, 1, 2, 3 happened. He said, subhanAllah, the Prophet said, Sadaqak wa huwa kadoob. He told you the truth, even though he's a liar. So in Islam, we don't have this concept of completely reject anything. We don't completely reject liberalism. We don't completely reject all these isms, ologies, whatever. Rather, we understand that some of it is true and some of it is not true. But we as Muslims, we have a reference, a resource to go back to, and that is the Quran and the life of the Prophet ﷺ. And you find this all throughout the Quran. Today I've chosen Surah Al-Teen, a very short chapter, to really help us, give us a little bit of insight how we can navigate through the context that we live today. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts this very short chapter with 3 oaths. وَالتِّينِ وَالزَّيْتُونِ وَطُورِ سِينِينَ وَهَذَا الْبَلَدِ الْأَمِينَ. 3 oaths. And the Quran utilizes oaths quite a bit. It's a tool of language in the Arabic language. And to really appreciate what it means, we need to kind of take a step back and understand why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes oaths. What is its role in language? Now, as we know in the realm and the era of texting and social media and all that, it's not always easy to express your emotions in what you type. In fact, a lot of arguments occur through text messages. Why? Because the other person misinterpreted what you're saying, because you don't have that element of emotion. And the English language doesn't really offer us tools to express our emotions. Sometimes we can put an exclamation point, that's it, right? Not much. But the Arabic language, from how rich it is, there are certain words that its role is to emphasize what's being said. Right? These are emphasizers, among which are oaths. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes an oath, He is emphasizing what is about to be said. And when He takes an oath on things that are very, very deep, very interesting. And here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, now He's building up to something, as we will get to. So He's taking oaths, emphasizing what He's about to say by making oath by these things. And the more oaths that are said, the more emphasis there is. So 3 oaths, that's adding a lot of emphasis. Man say, I swear to God, I swear to God, I swear to God. Right? It's a little bit different to say, I swear to God, just once. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says 3 things. What does He say? At-tini wa zaytun. Wat-tini wa zaytun. The fig tree, and the olive tree. Now when you read this in English, what the heck does that mean? Seriously, when you read this in English, what the heck does that mean? A fig tree and an olive tree. And you have this big question mark on top of your head. That's a reality. That's what it means. Okay, what's the deal with this? Now, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes an oath by something, automatically by default, that thing is very important. It's very deep. It has a lot to offer. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes an oath by it. When you look at the olive and the fig, and you look at the nutrition it provides, it is among the most healthiest. It's among the healthiest foods that we can take. And when you look at what it offers the body, in the olive and olive oil, what does it do? It helps fight cancer. Can you imagine that? When cancer comes about, there are certain cells in the body that are deformed. Olives, when you eat them, help heal those cells. It helps strengthen bones. It helps prevent Alzheimer's. It's good. Fig has a lot of fiber. It helps, the gut continue to move what's inside of it. Essentially, when you look at the benefits of olives and figs, you find something common in both. They help sustain the human being. They help keep him or her healthy. And these are both trees as well. So also look at the tree. What do trees do? We all know what trees do. They provide oxygen. They suck our carbon dioxide, right? So they help keep our air healthy, which is something we need, right? And in order for a tree to grow, in order for it to exist, what does it need? It needs soil. It needs rain. We're not the ones who created the soil, nor are we the ones who bring the rain. So when you look at a tree, you find that it's pointing us to a system, right? A very precise, very interesting system. This is an entire science. The science of, what's it called when it rains? What's that? Precipitation, there you go. Right? I don't think it's called the science.
The water cycle.
Right?
It's the water cycle.
The water cycle, right?
But that's a form.
Precipitation, right? We understand that's part of the water cycle. Right? So it's pointing you to something more than just an olive and just a fig. Even though the olive and the fig are quite essential to human beings, it's pointing us to something a lot more than that. An entire system that we can study, that we can analyze. Not only that, we are dependent upon it. We are dependent upon these things. And Allah is taking oath by it. Saying, you see these things? I'm swearing by it. Pay attention to it. And then He says, وَطُورِ سِينِينَ, and the Mount Sinai. We know Mount Sinai is, in Egypt, it's in present-day Egypt. You know how they have this peninsula right by the Red Sea? Right? Mount Sinai is in the southern part of that. Mount Sinai, okay, well, a mountain. It's a desert. When you look at Google pictures, it's just a desolate land. And you have this kind of small village there and with a masjid, and that's it. People go there and they hike. What's the deal with Mount Sinai? Well, in Surah Al-Mu'minun, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? وَطُورِ سَيْنَاء تَنْبُتُ بِالدُّهْنِ وَصُبْغٍ لِلْآكِلِينَ. In this mountain, in this area, there's a tree that grows, which is the olive tree. But here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't point to the olive tree itself, but rather points to what we extract from the olive tree. From the olives, we extract oil. Olive oil. Look at the benefits of olive oil. And here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala points to a specific role of the olive oil. That is, we use it as a dip and to fry. Right? We use it in our foods, which is healthy. It's a lot healthier than the alternative of cooking oil, vegetable oil, and whatnot. But also we use it as ointment. SubhanAllah. We use it as ointment, not just for our skin. It's good for our skin, not just good for eating. We also use it as ointment for, what they would use it for? Torches. They'd use it on ships, for example, to keep things sealed and together. There's a lot of benefit there. And it's coming from this land. And then the third oath is, وَهَذَا الْبَلَدِ الْأَمِينَ. And this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pointing to the safe village, pointing to Mecca. وَهَذَا الْبَلَدِ الْأَمِينَ. This is the safe village. Now, it's pointing to Mecca. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have described it in many different ways. He chose this word, Amin. Now in the Quran, the scholars have said, if you take any word in the Quran and substitute it with all of its, or any of its synonyms, you'll find that the word that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen is the best word to choose. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala points to this adjective to refer to this or to describe this city, well, it's in the context of what's being said, and we ask, well, why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say this and not something else? It is the safe city. Well, perhaps the reason Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose safety is on top of the health and then the safe or the good body that these plants or these vegetables or fruits offer the body, right? We are safe internally. Well, doesn't mean we are safe externally. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He made this land, this village, this city, safe. SubhanAllah. So not only did He provide us with good health and the means of sustaining good health, but He also provided us with safety externally. You know, one of the greatest blessings, and look at the greatest blessings, and from a secular perspective, not from the Islamic, from a spiritual perspective, what are the greatest blessings? It's not money. Health. The older you get, the more you realize and appreciate how important health is, how big of a blessing health is. And also safety and security. Because imagine if we lived in an area where it's not safe. That creates a lot of stress, a lot of economical difficulties. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is here saying, telling the people of Mecca, telling us and the Prophet ﷺ, He gave you the means of sustaining your health and the means of being safe. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is building up to something. So what is the answer to these oaths? What is He swearing by? لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. We have created the human being in the best form. Look at the human being and compare it to all other animals. Animals, when you look at them, they're pretty ugly. And sometimes a dog is furry and it's cute, right? Or the cat is cute. But when you look at the way it's made and compare it to the human being, they're quite ugly, right? I mean, they just go out and they poop somewhere and they pee or wherever, and it doesn't matter. They're not like the human being. Animals walk on four, with the exception of kangaroos. But kangaroos are one of the most ugly creatures out there, subhanAllah. Right? Look at them, man. They're just weird looking. Kangaroos, man, have you looked at them? They can fight, though. They can fight, fine, right? But the human being, made in a way that's beautiful. We stand up. We're able to adapt to any situation, any environment. We're able to progress, to build, to learn, right? To adapt. When you look at the previous oaths, you find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pointing us to our physical realities. And he's saying that he created us in the best form. Now notice how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala connects this with the previous oaths. He is saying he made you in the best form and he provided you the means of staying in the best form. Now we're talking about physically. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. Now, we mentioned that in order for trees, to flourish and to provide its fruits or its vegetables, it needs rain. There needs to be this system. In order for safety to be, for us to be safe, there needs to be some means that we take to protect ourselves, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pointing to the system saying that, look, there is a system going on that's catering to your needs. Do you think that's random? Do you think that's random? When you look at the world, do you think all of this is a series of cause and effect like what atheists say? It just an explosion happened and lo and behold, 14 billion years later, you are here and mashallah, there's a perfect system at play. Do you think that's the case? When we look at our creation, how the universe caters to us, we cannot but say that there is a reason for it. There is purpose here. There is purpose. And in order for purpose to exist, now we need to reanalyze those first three oaths in a spiritual way. Wattini was zaytun, fig and olive trees. Where are the best figs and olive trees? The Middle East, specifically where? Palestine. Palestine. Turi Sinai, Mount Sinai is where? Egypt. This safe village is what? Mecca. What do these three things have in common? What is it? What is it?
Holy sites.
Egypt's not a holy site.
They all speak Arabic.
What is it? You make a child, you get into Illuminati stuff. What is it? They're all desolate. Palestine's desolate, man? What are you talking about? What prophet was in Palestine? Isa alayhi salam. What prophet was in Egypt? Musa alayhi salam. What prophet was in Mecca? What do these three prophets have in common?
Religious.
Right? They're all religious, but what do they come with? Books.
Messengers.
The Torah, the Bible, and the Quran. When you look, my dear brothers and sisters, when you look at the system and you say there is a purpose, well, that purpose is told to us by these prophets. They came with the three books, the three prominent books, in which 60% of this world follow, if not more. They're saying, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, if you think, when you look at the world, how there's a system, there must be a purpose. And in order for that purpose to truly be fulfilled, there must be a relationship between the Creator and the created. These three prophets came with that. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. Do you think we created the human being just randomly in this perfection? Or not perfect, but in this beautiful way. In this interesting, unique way. For no reason. You notice that throughout the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He talks about purpose, He always links it to creation, our creation. For example, Surah Al-Alaq, talking about the creation of the womb. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the purpose of those verses telling us, do you think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created you and gave you and taught you for no reason? Do you think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put all of this subhanahu, this precision in the creation of the human being only to tell you, go and that's it, I have nothing to do with you? For no reason? Not at all. We created the human being in the best form, so that when we look at ourselves in the mirror, we remember that the one who created us in the best form uniquely created us with purpose. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues the chapter and says, ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ. Then we return them to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment in the lowest forms. We return them to Him. We will return to Him. Humans will return to Allah in the lowest form. They were the highest form on earth. But when they return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the day of judgment, and the day of judgment is always linked to purpose and our creation. Because without the day of judgment, without the afterlife, there is no purpose. There cannot be a purpose. We cannot understand this world without the element of the next life. It makes no sense. So all these atheists that are coming out and all atheism is spreading. Why is atheism spreading? Because they dismiss the concept of the next life. You cannot understand this world without the next life. Right? We return them in the worst form. Why? Because most people will reject these prophets. That's a reality. And even those who accept the prophets, even those who are followers of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how many of them actually adhere to his sunnah? How many of them actually adhere to the Quran? How many of them center their lives around the Day of Judgment, around the afterlife? Very few. We return them to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are returned to Him in the lowest form. Except إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ فَلَهُمْ أَجْرٌ غَيْرُ مَمْنُونٍ. Except those who believe and do good deeds. For them is a reward that's never limited, that's never stopped, that never ceases. Paradise. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed us with a book that is His words. When you look at the Quran, it's not some random person or an interpretation. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's words. He is speaking directly to you, specifically to your heart, trying to arouse your emotions, because it is our emotions that heavily determine our behavior. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to us, telling us, oh so-and-so, you were created with honor and dignity. You were created with a purpose. And that purpose is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is a form of honor for the human being. If you don't want to return among the lowest of the low, then worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That gives you dignity. So when we look at all of these ideologies, all of these isms, for the believer, our perspective is the following. How does this get me closer to Allah? How does this get me closer to paradise? This is our question. And this is very important. Why? Because such a perspective on life is absolute and remains with the individual and does not shift or change or need to be tweaked or reinterpreted or reformed with time. Why? Death is a reality and the next life is a reality to us. No matter what the context of human beings is, if we live in an ultra-conservative country or an ultra-liberal country, if we are living in a high-tech country or a third-world country, it's all the same if our perspective is exactly this. Therefore, it doesn't matter if I'm male or female. It doesn't matter if I'm rich or poor. It doesn't matter if I'm black or white. All of these things are irrelevant. Why? Because our chance at getting to paradise does not differ from person to person. If you are rich, it does not give you an advantage to getting to paradise. It doesn't give you an advantage with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He doesn't love the rich people more than the poor people. If you are a female, it doesn't matter. Because our ultimate goal, our purpose can easily be fulfilled as a female just like a male. So when you look at feminism or liberalism and all these things that are struggling and they're shifting and they're this internal war that's going on, this battle of hearts and minds. And again, it's not about dismissing these ideologies. It's not about saying it's all wrong. No, some of it is right and some of it is wrong. But from our perspective, if our lives are centered around the next life, it doesn't matter if you're male or female. It doesn't matter your race. Look at what happened, like race in America. It's you can study race in America. Why? Because it's unique. In other parts of the world, like in the Arab world, you can find someone who's darker than Samuel L. Jackson. But they're an Arab. They're an Arab.
I ain't gonna say me.
Right? It doesn't make a difference. They're still Arabic. They're just a dark Arab. Right? Race in America is strange. And you can study this. And if you say something racist, you get fired, rightfully so. But why are people differentiating between each other based on race? It's unique here in America. Well, unfortunately, what you find is that these things start getting imported. And again, the situation of women in America, it's very different than other parts of the world. But unfortunately, a lot of Muslim Americans, due to their lack of experience or, they're still learning, they don't realize that this is a Western problem. And unfortunately, it starts being imported into Islam. And people start assuming that because America is going through these problems, Muslims are going through these problems as well. They need to be addressed. When it's not the case. I'm not saying the Muslim world is perfect. That's not what I'm saying. But when we need to reform our minds to where our lives are centered around Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the next life. Because by doing that, these issues that are creating such a ruckus in America or other parts of the world become secondary. Now, I'm not saying they're not important, but they become secondary. I'm a man. What is my role? What are the male role? Well, first and foremost, I am a servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is my number one role. Whether I'm a stay-at-home dad, or I go to work, or me and my wife, provide one another, or we have a shared bank account or whatnot, all of these things are irrelevant. Why? Because it doesn't bring me closer to Allah, nor does it make me more distant from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rather, it's about prayer, it's about fasting, it's about charity, it's about being good, following the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. ثم رددناه أسفل سافلين إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات فلهم أجر غير ممنون. They have a reward that will never cease. It's unlimited. I mean, can you imagine that? When time is no longer relevant. I mean, it's so mind-boggling because we are so what's the word? Dependent, yeah. We are so dependent on time. We are so influenced and affected by time. When we say there's no more time, you can't even imagine that. Well, in paradise, what happens, with time? Even though it's no longer relevant, it doesn't affect our bodies, but there is still some perception of time in that the more we are in paradise, the more beautiful paradise becomes. Like we gather on Fridays in this life. In paradise, there's a similar gathering on Friday. On that day, we meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every Friday. And in that meeting, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unveils part of Him. And imagine the beauty. And that beauty now affects everything in existence. And it's because of His beauty and the rays of His beauty start touching paradise. It's touching you and the inhabitants of paradise. The size of paradise increases. The beauty of paradise increases every week. To the point where the Prophet ﷺ says that we will go back to our spouse. And they will say, man, the last time I saw you, or now you're more beautiful than the last time I saw you. Quite amazing. Now imagine 1 trillion years passing by. Your paradise starts. The least person in paradise gets 10 times this earth. Imagine after 1 trillion years, what would that size be? What would they have? This life, in comparison of the next life, is so irrelevant. Yet it's so unfortunate how much people fight over it. No, we have all these hashtags, right? We're going to spread this ideology, and we're going to do this, and it's a battle of hearts and minds. But for the believer, what is that in comparison to what's in the next life? Our focus should be on the next life. And by doing that, this life becomes that much more in tune. It makes that much more sense. It gives us that much more perspective on what this life really is and our goals in it. SubhanAllah. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ فَلَهُمْ أَجْرٌ غَيْرُ مَمْنُونٍ فَمَا يُكَذِّبُكَ بَعْدُ بِالدِّينِ أَلَيْسَ اللَّهُ بِأَحْكَمِ الْحَاكِمِينَ. So who, after these short verses, who then will deny the next life? There has to be purpose. When you look at this world, it's not random. There has to be a reason. And I've given this analogy many times, but it's always good to reflect and remember, right? If I were to take this microphone and put it on the floor in front of me and ask you, and you were to ask me, why did I do this? Ask me why I did that.
Why did you do it?
For no reason.
Oh, wow.
What do you think? Are you satisfied?
No.
Absolutely no reason. I'm not trying to prove a point. I'm not playing a prank. I'm not being silly. No reason. What do you say, Mahmoud? Say what's in your mind.
I don't like that answer.
Say what's in your mind.
You're crazy.
I don't like that answer.
You're crazy. I've asked this question so many times. I always get the same answer. You're crazy. If we cannot accept someone doing something as simple as putting a microphone down without reason, how can we accept Allah creating an entire universe for no reason? It doesn't make sense. When you look at the fig tree and the olive tree and what has to happen in order for them to flourish, when you look at the Mount Sinai, when you look at Mecca and how Mecca was the home, when you go to Mecca and you travel, look outside Mecca, it's a desolate land. There's literally nothing there. Anyone who goes to Mecca is not going there for fun. They're going there to worship. That's it. There's nothing there. To the extent where no country, no civilization ever went and colonized Mecca. Why? There's nothing there. Yet it is from there the Prophet ﷺ came out. And it is from there a movement came out that changed the course of human history. Do you think that's it's random, without purpose? SubhanAllah. After knowing this and looking at yourself and what you mean, who is going to deny the Day of Judgment after that? أَلَيْسَ اللَّهُ بِأَحْكَمِ الْحَاكِمِينَ. Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not the most wise? Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not the wisest of the wise? And here as Muslims, we need to appreciate this. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who created this universe. And now we have access to outer space and images of outer space. Look at how precise everything is. If the earth was 1 foot or a few feet closer to the sun, what would happen? It would melt. It would be uninhabitable for us. If it was a little bit further away from the sun, what would happen? Precision. It rotates around the sun once every 365 days on its axis, once every 24 hours. It's so precise that we can determine when the sun will set after 1,000 years. When you look at the stars and how they're organized, we can use it to navigate this earth. We know where north, south, east, and west is. The people in the ships back then, without GPS, without all this technology, how did they use to navigate in open waters? With the stars. SubhanAllah. The wind comes, it brings the clouds, and the clouds bring the rain. And the rain causes what? Irrigation. The irrigation creates vegetation. And vegetation creates food, and vegetables, and fruits. And these trees contain seeds, and these seeds fall down because of the wind. And then the animals come like a squirrel, and then they plant the tree. They plant the seed, and then it becomes a tree. Constant sustenance. Do you think all of this is random? When you look at this, can we not say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who did all this, the creator, is wise? Look at the wisdom there. He placed everything where it belongs. Well, do you think the one who sent down the Quran did not place everything where it belongs? In a manner that is relevant to every time and every place and every individual? Therefore, we as Muslims, we need to stop questioning what the Quran means. Rather, our perception is we